Hi, I'm Julia Ain-Krupa, and this is the Impatient Moviegoer. Today I want to talk to you about the film Past Lives. This gentle and moving work by Celine Song is an exploration of love and connection over time. It is the story of a young female artist, Nora, thoughtfully played by Greta Lee. We meet Nora in childhood before she has emigrated, when she is still Na young. Many years after leaving her Korean homeland, Nora reconnects with her first childhood love, Hae-sung, tenderly embodied by actor Tae Yoo, when he travels to visit her in New York. Then married to Arthur, an American writer, and fully immersed in her artist life, Nora is brought back to a lost part of herself by his visit. Past Lives takes us through the many incarnations of Nora's relationship with Hae-sung as she lives out her dual identity, here expressed through her different loves. From watching the trailer, one can tell that Past Lives will be intimate and touching and relatable, dealing with questions of lost chances, first love, and childhood attachments. But what is not necessarily so visible from a first impression is just how deep past lives will cut. This is true not only because it is a story that most immigrants can relate to, and that those who change their country as children tend to hold another and often unintegrated self within, but also it addresses universal questions about romantic love and relationship, destiny, and even the purpose of this life. Past Lives draws us into its core in a loving way because it somehow approaches the audience with the same sensitivity that Nora and Hae-sung hold for one another, a kind of thoughtfulness that belongs to a child. Past Lives leaves me wondering about attachments, if we choose them or they choose us. Early on in the film, Nora and her sister are encouraged by their parents to pick new names for their new life. They barge in on their parents' smoky, creative den and declare their decision, in that moment creating the separation of time that will define their future lives. If you leave something behind, you gain something too, Nora's mother says to Hae-sung's mom, while explaining why they have decided to immigrate. On the plane overseas, the sisters playfully introduce themselves in English. I'm fine, and you? They repeat back and forth to each other, giggling happily in their seats. Mid-air, they are already establishing their new selves, entering the unknown. The deep bond between Hae-sung and Nora is played out over time as they reconnect 12 years after her departure, staying in touch through different phases of their life. This long-distance excitement, days and nights lived out over the phone, is familiar to many of us who have connection with people across the world. We can identify with the buzz of a phone or the thrill of an anticipated email or Skype call. There's something romantic and eternal in their bond, the kind of connection that stems from early childhood, one that is preserved through language. Sounds and rhythms recall first memories and words. Nora is shy about her Korean, but she clearly takes pleasure in revisiting a language that feels like home. Nowadays, my mom doesn't even call me Na Young, she tells Hae-sung. For Nora, the experience of re-meeting Hae-sung is so much more than a young woman reconnecting with her childhood love. It is also a chance for her to re-meet herself and to interact as the Korean being whose growth and transformation were arrested by immigration. I missed you, Hae-sung says, timidly during their first Skype call. Nora has missed him too, as well as the version of herself that he conjures, the one that only has one name. Their connection brings that child back to life, a self that was almost forgotten in a new world. In an interview about the film, director Celine Song described her real-life experience of sitting with her husband and her beloved childhood friend, acting as mediator. I actually felt like beyond translating between two languages and two cultures, I also was translating between two parts of my own self, she said, reflecting on that moment in time. One night in bed, Arthur tells Nora that her sleep-talking in Korean sometimes makes him afraid. Scared of what, she asks. You dream in a language that I can't understand, he says. Past lives uniquely emphasizes the pain and loss, not only of childhood, but also of a home and self that once abandoned can never be fully reclaimed. This is the shared pain of many immigrants, no matter their background or circumstance. It is a sense of living both outside and in between, a subject that philosopher Julia Kristeva so brilliantly explores in her book, Strangers to Ourselves. The Na Young you remember doesn't exist here, Nora will tell Hae-sung. For the immigrant, there's so much splintering off. New York. 20 years ago, I left her behind with you, she continues, to which he nods a solemn and tender, I know. Hae-sung looks at Nora with the open sensitivity of a young boy who is not yet a man. They share a tender admiration that is unmarred by the kind of boundaries that the experiences of life and adulthood can place around a person's heart. He calls her by her first name, Na Young, and takes her with him over the phone to sightsee in Korea. Signal disturbances prevent her from traveling with him all the way. There is a moment when we hear Nora say, "Why would I go to Seoul?" This line is set against the backdrop of city noise and the fading light of day, behind a curtain blowing in the wind. This soft, reflective moment brings to mind the film In the Mood for Love by Wong Kar-wai, a sultry story of missed opportunity and failed love, of longing in its most elegant and pure form. At a certain point, while Skyping her life away, Nora takes stock of her dream-like waiting pattern and decides to take a break from contact, soon after she meets Arthur. Nora starts a new life, and yet her early self remains unattainable to her husband. He lies in bed, legs and arms wrapped around her body, trying to speak to her in Korean. The distance between them is palpable. It is almost as if she doesn't want him to try to speak Korean. That world is private. It belongs to her alone. But when Hae-sung comes to New York, a past life is revisited, springing to light certain buried understanding and desire, raising the potential for a rift in her home. This is one of the many questions that will linger for the rest of the film. Who will Nora stay with? Who will she choose to love? In a scene where Nora is in the bathroom talking to Arthur while he is in the kitchen, a setup that perhaps takes cues from a scene in Godard's Contempt, she relays her impressions of Hae-sung upon seeing him after such a long time apart. Every statement she makes is an exploration of how Korean he is, or how Korean she is, and also how un-Korean she is. Like a Rubik's Cube rotating in her hand, she tries to examine her identity and her very being with relationship to her origins. It is a comical and realistic scene because it feels so real. Nora is trying to be honest with her husband while concealing her attraction to Hae-sung. Perhaps she is also concealing it from herself. There is a touching moment in the film where Hae-sung asks Nora, what if this is a past life as well, and we are already something else to each other in the next life, in our next life? Hae-sung is the embodiment of something beautiful and whole, of a kind of love that we read about but rarely meet. He is idealistic and uncorrupted by life. He still lives with his family, and in so many ways, he is waiting for his life to begin. Past life succeeds in beautifully holding at its core an innocent belief in romantic connection and destiny, a kind that is so rarely carried into an adult terrain. It is through this loving lens that each character is seen while managing to retain their complexity. Of course, with this triangle comes questioning and jealousy and confusion, but something magical endures, a belief in love as binding and eternal, and a kind of rare mutual respect that sings between these three characters, making past life an inspiring and unusual portrait of marriage and of a kind of gentle masculinity that is so rarely portrayed on film. Past lives reminds us what it means to be in love, the tenderness, the uncertainty, the willingness, and the longing. It delivers to us a possibility that in this life, love can have depth and meaning. In an LA Times Directors Roundtable, Celine Song said this about her film: "So much adult drama happens because adults are behaving like children. And I was interested in a story where these people that we meet as children are having to behave like adults." This so accurately describes what I find touching about Past Lives. It is a film that reminds us to treasure one another, saying that just because we are adults doesn't mean we have to lose touch with the early beloved part of ourselves. After all, even those of us who are not immigrants still have a little Na Young inside. So with that, I encourage you to see this film. I'm Julia Ain-Krupa. This is The Impatient Moviegoer. Thank you so much for listening and for watching. Keep watching movies. Keep searching for the beauty in life, even in times where it may be hard to find. And take care until next time.